So great to have you on the podcast today, Ash. I really
Yeah,
appreciate you coming on to share some of your journey. And I think our listeners are going to be really interested to hear how you started and then how you've kind of evolved into what it is that you're doing right now.
yeah.
So welcome on.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Yeah,
No worries at
great.
all. It's yeah, as I said, a pleasure. And I'd really love to hear first off how you got started. Like give us a bit of a history of Ash, how
Okay.
you got started and what it looked like when you very first got into the industry.
All right. Well, I effectively started, I think my career in the world was really on, I was looking at playing rugby professionally, and I was doing some playing with rep, particularly in high school. And I ended up getting injured. And I've always had an interest in chiropractic and massage and osteo. My father's actually a chiropractor and osteopath, and he's probably one of the mainstays in the field. Like there's a lot of history with him. I've recorded a video about that, which people can get access to. But he's a bit of a pioneer, and I was fortunate in probably seeing the periphery of that and growing up in that environment. So you get an idea of, I guess, just the wellness and the people's health and well-being, how important it is. And so that's always been an influence, but my main influence initially was sport. So I did work a bit with my dad. It was back in the early 80s, whilst I was playing rugby as well. So I had an idea, well, this is my fallback plan. I'll play till I'm about 30 and I'm really, really wrecked, and then I'll go off to uni. Unfortunately, as I said, that was cut short. So I ended up back at school. I repeated year 12 because I was away a lot playing. So I thought, well, I better get my brains working rather than my brawn. So put some effort into there. And I ventured into sports science. And from that, I started working at Queensland University of Technology as an exercise physiologist. And I also did a massage course whilst I was doing that. So I had a background there where I was working with a lot of the athletes, and particularly with QUT, they had a phys ed department, and there were a lot of elite athletes there. So we also worked in with the Tennis School of Excellence. So I was doing heaps of different work, plus all the exercise. And I was doing martial arts at this time as well. So I was right into taekwondo back then, and I had a few clubs up in Queensland. So I was instructing. So my world was all about fitness and health. I was teaching aerobics and doing programs for people and teaching taekwondo and the massage, which I loved. I just loved that whole interaction with people. And what I really felt was the fact you could be helping them as being of service. And I got that when I was working with my dad years before. And at the time I was at QUT, I always had the back of my mind that I wanted to further my career. You know, I wanted to become a chiropractor and follow in my dad's footsteps and do a similar thing. So I was really just upgrading my skill levels and understanding. It's more knowledge based because I felt I was falling short with what I was doing. So anyway, I ended up getting into, I started Bachelor of Science at University of Queensland, and then got into RMIT, which was down in Melbourne. So I ventured down to Melbourne and started the course there. I really love the course. What I was finding was lacking, that they took a lot of the philosophy side of it out. They were talking more about a humanistic approach. And as you can see with the badge up here, it's got vital force. And that was more about vitality. And that's all the original chiropractic premise was, about the vital force. And I understood that from a very young age. So it seemed a bit odd how they were almost throwing the baby out with the bathwater there, you know, like it's becoming very reductionistic in the approach. So anyhow, I was leaning towards different types of techniques at the time when I was going through uni, and my father was a very heavy manual adjuster, like both the chiropractic and osteopathic stuff is quite heavy manual gear. And he was doing a bit of soft tissue as well, mind you. He wasn't falling short with that. But I was looking at more gentler, lower force techniques, and I was doing this while I was doing massage. I became very obsessed about the tonus of the body, about how the tone is representative of what's happening in the body. And so I became intrigued with that, and I ended up doing network spinal analysis quite in depth. So I spent a lot of time with a fellow called Donnie Epstein. He's a real pioneer in that field. So I learned a lot about the breath and the tone in the body, how it's held. And there's a thing called a somatopsychic wave, which you often treat people and you see that happen. And you're doing normal treatment I'm talking about, and you'll see them do a bit of a wave and you see your breath come in and then they'll relax. And for me, that was tying in what I'd seen over a lot of years. So the next step was how do I do this for practice? And I realized the whole idea with the network approach was more about emotional release and more about the body's patterning and releasing the tension, but it wasn't really looking at their symptoms. And I thought, well, that was falling short for me, because I thought, well, people are coming in to see you as a professional, they're in pain, they want to get out of pain, but I don't want to hear a rhetoric about here's a philosophy and that's all I do. They want to see that you're concerned about where they're at. And that's what I felt as a professional. If you're going to be really of service, you meet where they're at and you help them through where they need to go. The other stuff can come later, but the main thing is that you're actually there doing the service that they pay for in the best way you can. So I then bumped into this fellow, Romney Smeaton, and the interesting thing with Romney, he'd spent 5 years with Tom Bowen. Now, some people want to know Tom Bowen is a bit of a legend in the field of natural healing, particularly in the massage field. He'd branched, that had been branched out by Oswald Wrench years ago, and he taught to the massage therapists. With the thing with Tom Bowen, the really interesting thing is he actually apprenticed chiropractors and osteopaths to learn from him. And he'd basically go in and he'd observe him and he'd explain a bit of stuff. And this is coming from Romney. He spent 5 years with Tom. And so he learnt what Tom was doing, and it's low force. Sometimes people would line up for hours and he'd do one move, go boom, and I'd walk out feeling fantastic. And Tom was calling it an osteopathic technique. So, and this is what Romney had told me, that Tom really wanted it to be taught to people with the education. And I know this is back in the 70s. So nowadays the massage therapists are way more educated. You know, they've got definitely got a more solid ground. And it's the same with the chiropractors, mind you. So back then he wasn't as happy to teach it to massage therapists, but that was due to the training. So, but now with the concepts that what he does, I think it's quite usable for massage therapists, and there's some great skilled people out there. So, and we all know that because of the results you hear about. Anyhow, so I apprenticed myself to Romney in my final year of uni, and I was traveling down to Geelong, and he had a practice in Colac. So I was down there learning off Romney as much as I could. So he probably got a bit annoyed with me. It's almost borderline stalking probably, because I was so keen to learn. So I spent hours learning that technique, learning what he does, observing, seeing patterns that he saw, having time with him to explain why he did certain things in the sequence that Tom Bowen did himself, which is brilliant. So at the end of that, I ended up down in Colac and I took over Romney's practice. I started working with Romney and bought him out, and Romney moved back to Geelong. He already had a Geelong practice, but he got sick of traveling effectively. So I took over his practice, and man, that was a big learning curve. It was such a busy practice. He built this enormous thing. My first day in practice, I saw 57 people, and wow. That's big for a new grad, you know, like I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I've got to be honest. I was very green, even though I learnt the skill for that long and I'd had all the education with the diagnostics, I still had no idea what I was doing. I was like a fish out of water. And I found that quite confronting because I so much wanted to be helping people, and I ended up running behind and I was doing things I didn't think I would like to in doing that. You know, you don't want to be running behind. You end up doing shortcuts. And I thought, no, I can't do that. So I restructured the clinic, booked differently, put in systems. There wasn't really any systems there. This is a country practice. Anyone rang in, you just put them in anywhere. Total chaos. I couldn't function in chaos. So we just streamlined the whole practice and I put in a computer system. Back then it cost me 15 grand to stick in there. And now you can get on and use a laptop or your phone and get on to not capable, we're using capable, which I thought was incapable, but we use Clinico. And it's just amazing the tech that's come over those years. You know, you can't believe how easy things are. But anyway, I'm plugging Clinico, but yeah, it is a good program. It interrelates with Xero, which I use, the accounting system. Yeah, it's just from going back to the old school of pen and paper. We only had the old appointment books on paper, doing everything by hand with the accounting, having stacks and stacks of receipts. All of that's gone. So it's
client
just brilliant
notes too. Like we used to have filing
Yeah,
cabinets full of client notes at our clinic, and when
yeah,
they could go online as well, it's just so much easier. I totally agree. I mean, we're getting a little
yeah.
bit sidetracked right now into the tech side of
Yeah,
things, but
okay, well, go.
I remember when we were running our clinic, we used shortcuts, which again, back then you actually bought the computer system or rented it, I think, but they gave you
Yeah,
the actual point of sale computer as well as the software. And you had to
yeah, I
have that
know.
sitting on the desk, and that was how you managed all your stuff. Super
Yep,
expensive. And I agree. Like now it's just a mobile phone and a square reader or something, and away people go.
yeah.
It's so much
Oh, yeah,
easier. It's great.
it's brilliant. Yeah. So that's where I think it's good if you are in practice. Look, put systems in place
Yeah.
and streamline the thing and run a book on time. Respect other people's time because they're respecting your time. If they're turning up to their appointments on time, then it's a fair distribution. You know, you've got to be equity in how you do your business with them. Them know their time's important. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of things that you've got to reflect how you are in your business. Otherwise, if it's not congruent, hey, you go south. You know, and
Yeah.
I know that from your brain goes south anyway because you're not actually working with your integrity, and you can't do that in reality.
Yeah.
It's interesting because a lot of people they say, oh, business is separate to your emotion. You know, that's a business decision. And that's not true because if you know, if you're doing anything in life, there's emotive content to it. The big thing that I found, and with even looking at neurology, is that we place so much emotion with everything we do. To think that you can separate a business that you've put your heart and soul into separate to emotion, it doesn't cut. You
I
can't make a
totally agree.
business decision without emotion.
Yeah.
It's got to match your values. So
Yeah.
um,
Especially when you are the business. Like for most people that would be
exactly,
listening to this, health professionals, so many of them work for themselves, often by themselves, maybe in small teams. But the business is human. The business is you facing
yeah,
up to someone in a treatment room. And so, how can you
exactly,
say, well, the business is separate from me? It's like you literally are the business, it's part of your life. And you want to be able to
yeah,
create
yeah,
a business that supports your life, so that you're not
yeah,
just like separating it and giving it time and energy all the time. It's actually
yeah,
part of an integrated, exceptional experience of life. Is that, yeah, I have this business,
yeah,
it gives me money and time off when I want to, and I give it time and energy, just like my family and my house and whatever else it is that you've got as values in life. I just
yeah.
want to just loop this around for a sec, but I'm
Yeah,
astounded that one of the challenges that you shared is almost the complete opposite of what we might hear a normal new grad experiencing. It's like, normally we hear people, oh, when I first graduated, I had trouble getting my first handful of clients and it took so long. And you're like, bang, 57, did you say 57 treatments on the first day? It's like,
yeah, yeah,
wow, that is
yeah,
absolutely incredible. Now, I
yeah,
know chiropractic and osteo and Bowen, you've mentioned a bunch of different techniques there. They're all quite different to like your standard massage treatment that might go for an hour or longer
yeah.
often. How, like literally just how was 57 treatments in a day supposed to work? Like are they 10-minute treatments or something? How's that work?
Well, it's yeah, in a way, it's particularly with the Bowen, you tend to treat as a lot of people probably know, and give them a rest time. So while they're resting, you go and work with someone else. It varies to how much you really need to do with someone. I think the problem is, I'll explain a bit about this later, is that we all tend to overtreat. And the reason is because you feel that people value the time, the amount of time you're spending with them rather than the quality of time. And there is a massive difference between someone going out and spending half an hour or an hour with someone compared to 5 minutes, right? It's a mindset thing where people think, well, that means I'm not getting value. But what's the result, and what's their skill level, and what's their training? And are you actually achieving what you've gone in for, or are you not? You know,
Yeah.
you can treat someone for an hour and have no result. In fact, make them worse. You can treat someone in 5 minutes and make them feel fantastic.
Yeah.
So to say it has to be a certain time frame that's been put in place by people that have an idea there should be a certain time frame.
Yeah.
It should be about, you have a consultation with me. You are here for an expert opinion and an expert treatment. So to get that right, you got to know what you're doing. Honestly, you got to have a format as to why you do it, how you do it, why you do it, and when you do it. You know, there's got to be reasoning to what you're doing, and a measurable pre and post test to know that as a practitioner, you know what you are doing. You've got to know what you're doing to be able to do things so well streamlined. With Bowen, as I said before, sometimes he did one move and that was his treatment. And people were quite happy for that because they got great results. So I think what's happened, and I've seen new grads, this is the worst thing I've seen with chiropractic grads, they're almost frustrated physios, and because they're not using the chiropractic philosophy, they don't know what they're doing. I've got to be honest, they don't. They come out and say, well, what am I doing? I'm treating this person, they're coming with this, what do I do? So what do? They grab everything they've learned and put it into one treatment, because one of them might work. Which one, they don't know, but one of them might work, and then they're going to be a lot better. And it's not how it works. It's not, if it's usually less is more. If you know what you're doing and how you're putting an input into someone's system and their nervous system, then you should be able to pinpoint what the problem is, what pattern they're in, and then how to get them out of that pattern, out of the pain pattern. So it's, it seems massive to say I see 57 a day. There's other chiropractors I've seen more. It's not, it's a lot for a new grad when you're used to not, you don't know this, you only know this. So go down from here to there in an instant is impossible. You need,
and often that's a mind shift too, isn't it? Because I feel like even right down to the way people market themselves. If you say, you know, I offer a 30-minute treatment. I guess this is more common in massage than chiro too, probably, but people will say, you know, you can choose your treatment. It's 30, 60, 90 minutes. And it's almost the exact opposite of what you're saying. They're focused so much on the treatment, on the how this is going to happen and how long I'm going to have my hands on your body, rather than what the result is. And I think that's a good lesson for anybody, no matter what modality you're treating. It's like focus less on the modality, focus less on the how, and more on the result that someone gets. And that travels right through your entire business philosophy. It does cover off in the way you market and speak to people, and then in the way you actually work on them in treatment and what you charge. Just all of that kind of bundles together into that mind change.
And I really think they're giving, this is my opinion, right? So crucify me if you like, but I think what happens is people give their power over to the patients or their clients, who now they haven't spent all those years of learning what you do. How can they judge what you need to do for them? How can they come in and say, you need to do this, this, and this? When you're the one who's assessing them, your approach might be different to someone else they've seen. And your knowledge of what you're doing and your expertise is at a different level. How can you allow someone to dictate how long your treatment? It doesn't make sense to me that you give that over. But people do, this is what I'm saying, they have this idea is I'm paying for this amount of time, therefore you go hard at it for that amount of time. And they think then they've got more out of the treatment. But as I was saying, sometimes less is more, and you overtreat them. And as a practitioner, you're going to burn yourself out. And what good are you going to be to the next person if you're allowing everyone to dictate what you do all the time? You might as well go and work at McDonald's and get people to order you around and tell you what you got to make them. You know, you've got an expertise and a skill set. You shouldn't be afraid to use it, and say, and be firm in what you do and say, you know what, you're paying for my skill. I'm booking you in for a consult. I'm not going to say you can choose a time frame as to what's going to make the outcome happen. You should be able to know that as a practitioner. So, and that's what you learn. You know, that's what you actually got the skill for.
We often talk about the same kind of thing when developing treatment plans. It's like, you know, someone might come in with an expectation that they'll only need one treatment, but that's not really up to them. Exactly like you're saying. It's like you're the expert in the room and you're looking at a problem going, look, literally the best way to fix this is to come and see me once a week for the next 6 weeks. then it's kind of like your responsibility as a health practitioner to tell them that, right? And they can still choose yes or no or whatever. But in that moment, if you're the more educated, the more knowledgeable around health, and they've said, this is what the problem is, this is where I want to get to, it's your obligation to tell them what's going to be the best treatment plan,
that's absolutely true.
The best result. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something else I want to loop around to before this is a great conversation, by the way, Ash. We're going all over the place with this. But I want to return to this idea. You sort of shared a little bit about chiropractic and osteo and the way that the training has become very functional and humanistic. And then you kind of mentioned this word tone. I even wrote it down, you said tone or tonus. Tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that and how that might flow into what it is you're doing now. Because I can kind of sense that there's a bit of a discovery of something underneath the surface.
Definitely a link. Yeah, well, the whole idea of tone, like it goes back to chiropractic philosophy. It's it's an expression of where your nervous system's at. And that's why I'm looking at these techniques that show what your body's doing, because what do you treat when someone's on a table? And this is like the why. For me, the why is always is about you're trying to help people express themselves to their full potential, right? That's what vitalism is about. And before we get to the tone, I'll explain this within this answer, but there's three facets to this, and everyone talks about mind, body, and spirit, right? This is a standard triad. You always see the triad, but how many people actually really know what they mean by that? And how does that work when you actually got people on a table and you're treating them? So I spend a lot of time thinking about it, reading up on it, looking at different philosophies. And the main thing that I've realized is that with those three things, you're looking at whether with the body, say you've got the body, is the body in a state of ease, where it's relaxed, calm, there's good breath, the body's got its normal rhythms, or it's in a state of dis-ease, where the body isn't in a state of calmness, where there's the sympathetic nervous system is being kicked in and they're holding themselves with tension and holding that. It's a fear-based thing where your body is in a survival mechanism. So what happens is your limbic system gets fired up when you've got some sort of input, whether it's internal or external, that creates you to be self-protective. So it's just a natural thing. So you think about, you get a sudden scare, you get scared, your hackles go up. We're like cats and dogs. You have an injury, it causes pain, it registers as pain in your head, you get protective, sympathetic nervous system kicks in. You have a diseased organ, we're talking about disease, an organ can be diseased, same thing, your body becomes self-protective. So when you're looking at the whole idea of vital force and expressing yourself, if you're in that state, a sympathetic nervous system is fired up, how do you express yourself fully to the world? You actually can't, because there's something that's guarding you. There's a gardening part of you. There's a system there that's keeping you protected. So you're already fired up, you're already in that position. Any more input, you want to go further into it. So it's about how you react. And this is a state of ease or dis-ease. That's about the tonus of your body. So that's how it's expressed. So when we see someone on a table and we're looking at their tone, we're looking at the tension and the system, how it is, how they're breathing, how they're holding, the way they talk, the way they behave, the way they walk. Everything about them has got to do with that system, where they're at. So when you're looking at the mind, we're talking about how they're talking and how they're thinking. Then we're looking at, and it's the state of harmony or disharmony. Are they harmonious? Are they chilled? Are they present? Are they there? Are they seem to be distracted with their mind and going off in loops? Have they got chaos going on in their life? Are they turning up on time to their appointment? That's a good chance to say, is their life chaotic or is it harmonious? Do they get to the appointment super early, which is it's still a bad thing, because that means they're so challenged about having to be everywhere, then they're in a bad state as well, because they're worried about things going wrong all the time. So how they turn up, how they present with their mind, how they talk, the persona they're giving you is showing you the state of their harmony. And that's also about how they're expressing their whole vital force. The other side of it too is their spirit. Now, everyone gets worried when you mention spirit, because there's religious connotations and, hey, look, I think there is a divine, and I think to be connected with that is brilliant, but you don't have to have a belief with this, because it's either there or it's not. You're either connecting or you're disconnecting. And connecting means, can they relate to people? are they connected within themselves? Do they feel comfortable with who they are? Are they able to fully express that? Are they able to express it to other people? Do they tend to have energy that's drawn from God knows where? Have they got that vitality about them? Do they have a sense of community? Because that's when you're really connected, is when you actually start having a sense of community and you see people for greater than what they're presenting. So people present, you've got to think how people present. Most people are in a sympathetic nervous disposition, including me. Everyone is, to some point. It's a degree that they're stuck. Like I'm talking about being stuck in that position and how they express. So if they're stuck in a position and they're not able to be fully present, they're not doing life. They're actually doing a fear-based reality. So when someone's on the table, we're talking about tonus, we're looking at all of that. And the interesting thing when I've looked at the tone and how people are responding with their sympathetic nervous system is that I've actually been able to tie it in with the martial arts that I do, which I teach Aikido nowadays. So I've been doing martial arts for like 45 years. So I've had a fair bit of experience with how people react when they're getting attacked or they're under pressure. And what I've noticed, what I see on the table with people's symptoms and how they behave and how they are, is also what happens when I'm seeing them on the martial arts side of things. It's how they react when they're getting attacked, how they react when they're confronted. And you know, I teach seminars with people. I teach a bit of Aikido and then explain about how this ties into the real world. The other thing too is if you're with Aikido, it's about the way of peace and harmony. So if you're really able to have people come at you and you'd be able to handle that stress that's coming at you in a calm way, which is your parasympathetic nervous system, then you're in a place of peace. You're able to handle conflict and move around it and deal with it. And you actually start seeing people for greater than what you think they are, because you're just seeing them as reactive to the environment and not being able to be in that space. So immediately when you start seeing how people react and when you train them to be able to get into that space and be able to deal with their stress, you start seeing, well, you know what, people are actually more than what you think. You know, you can see that. And I see that on the table as well. So I see the same pattern. So I've developed like 5 phases that people have. And it's all about the fight, flight, and fright response. So all those phases are all about how you interact in the world, how you deal with conflict. So you can be stuck in those patterns, or different circumstance, you may react a certain way. And so you then got to work out, well, okay, they're in this. You've got to start knowing your neurology to understand how you kick that back, how you change their brain around, how you get neuroplasticity happening to help them release and then be back in that space again. And part of that is the symptoms. A lot of people don't get the idea that if you have a symptom, you're in that state straight away. So
yeah, because I was going to ask about that. Like, I love this. Like, it's just so holistic and so big picture, being able to look at those 3 different things and really understand what's going on, like deeply within someone. And then I guess my question from that is, you know, you're talking about training and you're talking about Aikido. If someone is listening to this and they're a hands-on therapist, and I know you mentioned you do training around this for other therapists too, like, are you teaching them techniques they can use in the treatment room? Or do you say, well, part of what they have to do is some other kind of work with their clients? What's the answer?
Well, so what I basically teach is that it's about them being able to recognize what's happening on the table. So I teach the phases. So the phases that people fall into and the pain patterns and the symptoms that go with it. So there's a lot of symptomatology, the neurology as to this is what they're doing. And then you've got to look at, well, with what techniques I use, which is all low force. So it's about, if they're doing this and this is how we can change that and get them back into the neutral phase instead of being all messed up. So it's about learning how people respond to the environment, how their pain is making them feel, what phases they're in, and then how to then clear that out of their system. So I do teach a technique, but if you understand other techniques and you're cognizant of how that actually affects the neurology, because some people make amazing claims. They say, I'm doing this and now it's doing this. And you think, well, how do you know that? Tell me the neurology. What's it actually doing? Because we are matter, right? Okay, we are spirit, but we are matter, right? So we're dealing with the matter. Even with energy work, you're still dealing with their expression in their body. So the neurology has to actually be able to express that. So what I'm teaching is, this is the input, this is where they go, this is how it integrates. Like if I'll give you a simple example, spinothalamic, if you hit something that's sore, there's this branch goes from the pain receptors to your parietal lobe, where you have a somatotopic distribution of gyri, which are like this. That's all those little bits here. And these little bits that tell you different parts of your body, and it registers as pain. So that's bang, you got pain. But there's also a lateral branch, a medial branch. That's a lateral branch. A medial branch actually goes and does a descending branch, which gives you all the pain regulators, like the modulating pain. So that's things like serotonin and endorphins. That's what goes down. The other thing is that it has another branch that goes to the amygdala in the frontal lobe, frontal cortex, and that feeds into your brain and gives you a feedback there. So then it becomes an emotional attachment to what this pain is. So you're starting to register, this pain means that. So past experiences get locked in. The feeling of what this is has an emotional effect. And we were talking about emotion before with business. Emotions tied in with your pain too. So that's what the people start feeling. So it's important to understand what these patterns are doing, the input you're doing, whether it be the proprioceptive route or the spinothalamic route, to how that's going to impact on how they feel and how they change. So, and you've got to be able to monitor it. So I teach pre and post test, because how are you going to know what you're doing is doing anything? And the results are what count. And I keep saying is you're helping people out of their pain. So you're able to manage the pain as well, but you're also getting them to then fully express. And there's a good understanding with, talking about how pain's emotional, that when someone's got pain, are they wanting to be out of pain is the other question. They're seeing you, but the pain, what is the pain for them really? Because we don't work, people say, look, we go towards pleasure and away from pain, but effectively we really are reward seekers more than running away from pain. So sometimes the reward is, the pain is there because you feel you deserve to be in pain. So you take that pain away from someone, then how do they feel? They've got to look for something else. The other side of it is their pain is also there. The reward is that they get attention for it. So there's all these other sides you've got to think of. There's an emotional side to all of this with pain too. So part of that is what I put into the course that I teach. There's a lot of different levels to it. I sort of do the basic level and we do intermediate and advanced, but this is the basic stuff, is learning how to assess, what to look for, how to change the system, how to manage their pain patterns, what major things are happening when they're in a certain pattern, like they might be attacking, they might be fighting. So all these different reactions they have has a different effect on their nervous system. So we've got to work at clearing it. So
sounds fascinating. It's absolutely the sort of stuff I know Leash would love too. I remember when she treats, she works with a lot of more advanced cases or complicated cases, she calls them. Yeah. And part of it is just the physical work. But sometimes she'll even come home and she'll be like, it seems like massage is just an excuse to work on all sorts of other stuff that's going on within a person. And I guess she's coming at it more from a mindset point of view, because that's her training. She's done a fair bit of sort of mindset and coaching style work. And so she's, at the same time as treating someone physically, she'll be talking with them sometimes, depending on what they need, but she might be talking with them about challenges they've got and how to overcome those, and making those sort of mindset tweaks through language and through asking good questions, which is all the kind of training that she's got. But it sounds like you're then taking that even to the next level above and looking at the brain neurology that's actually going on as that happens, and how the physical is attached to the mental, like literally in our heads. Is that right? That's kind of my layman's kind of understanding of what you're talking about there.
Yeah, because that's, we're talking, like, mindset's brilliant. I love mindset because it has got the way people think is so important to how they do the world. Like, if you know yourself, there's a fixed and the growth mindset. You know, if you have someone come in who's got a fixed mindset and you're a growth mindset, there's often a clash because you can't understand why they don't want to get up and be something more, you know. So it can be hard treating in that context. So that's why this stuff is good, because yes, you can say certain things, and I'm a real believer in that. And I talk a lot about that in the course that I teach. I actually really support that. The other side of it is when you're changing your neurology, that's when you get that shift, because they're not locking in to that sympathetic response. Then you've got a bigger opening. You actually able to read, I've got them now. I can actually put an input here and get this whole thing shifting because they're not stuck. And that's probably a little bit of an additive to what Leisha's doing. Yeah.
I love that. It just sounds absolutely fascinating and so cool. Look, I want to, I guess, ask, the next question is, like, who actually comes and does your course, your training? Like, it sounds fascinating. Do I have to be a chiropractor or something? What's your kind of understanding of who's going to come along and actually do this stuff with you?
Well, with the course, I think it's better to have a bit of an understanding. With the course I'm offering, it is for professionals, including massage therapists, chiropractors, osteos, physios, acupuncturists, naturopaths, that sort of level where you're already out in the field and you're actually working with people. For lay people, you can teach them stuff what they can do at home, easy enough. The other thing I offer, because I've created this Vital Force website, which has got, I've actually got my keto attached with that. I've got the bits about mind, body and spirit. So doing blogs all the time. Also, I'm offering different educational opportunities. So there might be a bit, I've got one up there at the moment, it's about meditation. So for the lay people. So, and that's all about mindset as well, about how to change how you think. And I've put a bit about the 5 phases that I teach in there for the general public. So I'm teaching aspects of it for people to understand a bit more about what they do in the world and just to make them more conscious. But as far as the course goes, it really is for professionals for the practitioner training level, but I'm definitely offering other things. I've even got a neurology course there for people who are already out in the field and they want to learn a bit more about neurology. So I'm putting up different types of things. I've got a free thing up there about mindset, believe it or not. So it's interesting you said that.
There you go.
I've even got an interview, which yes, people don't realize that I did some work with you guys, which has been brilliant. So I actually, part of that, I did an interview with my dad, which I've put that up on the website for people to, it's free. You know, there's free stuff there. There's some paid stuff. What I'm trying to do is generate, I guess, a community where people want to come and learn about things and progress in the world and give them the tools to do that and give them support. So I'm trying to create a, similar to what you're doing with your massage business, because you're doing more than just the massage side, definitely. Like you're helping so many people and your community is brilliant. So to be able to build a community is what it's about, because people help each other and it helps evolve something greater to what you can do by yourself. And I love that. I love sharing of knowledge and giving and receiving of it, because you're not going to progress if you're just sitting here in your own little world like a hermit in a cave. You need to actually be out there and share.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe it's about.
And our community is amazing. You're right. Like we are a bit of a catalyst for it, but there's so many people in there that just share with each other. We're certainly not the only people giving value there. Everybody is like arms around when there's things going on, and lots of great advice and support, even just for simple questions. So if someone was interested in, like, they're listening to all this going, oh, this sounds fascinating, Ash, I'm so ready to sort of join this community or learn more, where would they go? What's the best place to find that community? Is it the website?
You can go to the website, which is just vitalforce.net.au. I'm on Facebook as well, like Vital Force on Facebook, and I'm building up a community within that as well. The other thing they can do is phone one of the clinics, because I talk to people, which, believe it or not, this still happens nowadays. So they can simply just phone the clinic. Did you want the number? I'll give you the number.
We'll put all that in the show notes, so people can see it there, because I know we will have international listeners as well. So some of them, they'll need international codes and all that kind of stuff. But definitely website, Facebook, being able to actually call and have a chat with you. It sounds
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for being so open with what you're sharing too. That's another thing that I'm taking away from today. You've got this amazing experience, this massively beautiful, holistic, I'd even hesitate to call it a technique because it's just so big, like a philosophy more than just a technique.
Yeah.
And I can just sort of sense your heart wanting to share that out to the world. It's like, here, everyone, look at this amazing thing that I found. This is fantastic. So thank you for being open and sharing that and leading the way.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunities too. That's been brilliant.
No worries. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. I really encourage people to get in touch because it sounds like a great thing to be able to be part of.
Yeah.
And I will catch up with you soon, Ash. Thanks.
Yeah. On a side note, I really wholly support what you guys are doing. I think you and Alicia have put together a brilliant opportunity for a lot of different practitioners, and I've taken advantage of that myself, and it's helped me on my journey. And I think that, hop on board, don't be scared to, because you're both brilliant at what you're doing. So
yeah, thanks,
great.
Ash. That's great. Lovely little plug for us at the end there. I appreciate that. And I quite often say, iron sharpens iron, right? We love working with people who are doing amazing, fun things because it sharpens us and it sharpens you, and everybody wins from it. It's the same thing. It's community, right? We all sort of work together to be able to pull the industry forward. Love it.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Thanks very much for being on the show.
Okay.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.